Okay, we are being live streamed. So I
Good
have
morning.
Dolores Taller here today. Hello. So we're here to help launch the Life of Libby book, which I found out about a half an hour ago that we are a #1 Amazon bestseller, which is so exciting. And I invited Dolores Taller to speak with us today because she worked with Libby Frank. She was a very close friend of Libby's. And I think that she can share some memories with us. And I also want to learn a little more about you today. So in the book, you're in the book. Libby talks about getting the National Middle East Committee started. And she sent a notice out to people that might be interested. And Dolores was the first person to respond to the call. And she offered to send welcome messages to the other people that responded. And she also became one of Libby's dearest friends. So welcome. And I wanted to ask you to tell us a little more about your first meeting with Libby.
I had contact with Libby pretty early on. I had been in a dialogue group that had Jews and Palestinian in it. Early 1970s, very early. And when she put out that request, I got in touch with her and told her some of the things we had discussed. And that was the beginning of the relationship and of I guess, of the committee as well.
Mm-hmm.
I met her in person in Birmingham, England, at the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom meeting, where she led a very hot discussion that included women from the United States, from Lebanon, from Israel, and the Palestinian woman who was living in Iraq, as well as the British people who had come and others. And that was quite an interesting discussion, to say the least.
Yeah, wow. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's actually in the book also. I remember Libby telling me about going to Birmingham, England, and just not to get too far off topic, but she talks about in the book, she got this call that they wanted her to facilitate this workshop that you're talking about. And she told her husband Mort about it. And she said, Mort said, wait, I have a map. And he went to get a map to show her of where she was going. And she said it took her a few minutes to realize that it was a map of Birmingham, Alabama, and he was joking with her. So,
Yeah.
so that was the first time that you actually met Libby in person.
Yes, and we got to know each other through that process and through a trip to the Shakespeare House, where I learned that she was from Cleveland and I was from Cleveland.
Oh, wow.
And turned out she knew my sister. And yeah, it was these funny coincidences. And then we continued for a number of years working on Israel-Palestine questions. She was so smart about how to do it. And I will tell you that very few peace organizations were doing this work at the time we started in the early 70s. And it was pretty important for us. And she came up with the idea, I think, along with Edith Ballantyne, who was the Secretary General of the International WILP at the time, to send a delegation to the confrontation states. And she would be leading the US, these would be US women on this delegation. They did a preliminary trip. I guess Libby wrote about it. And then we went the next year with 16 US women, and she led it. I was one, I am Terry Meister at the time, now Galvin Plattner, were the steering committee for that trip. And that was a very memorable and very important for us and for the work we then did, because it formed the basis for the action that we took and worked on for a number of years. And that the peace movement really wasn't doing at the time. I think American Service Committee had done a lot of work, but in terms of grassroots work, this was pioneering, certainly as I look back on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, it's actually takes up a pretty large section of the book, that trip, and all of the countries that you visited, all of the leaders and groups that you met with, and discussions that you had.
Yeah, we went to Egypt, we went to Lebanon. There was a civil war going on.
Yes.
We Syria, Jordan, and then we concluded going to the West Bank of Palestine and ended up in Israel. It was quite an important trip. I just opened my eyes in ways that I couldn't have imagined. Yeah, blew a lot of stereotypes out of my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and then all of you went and wrote and spoke about what you learned and helped to educate people who were not getting this level of information anywhere else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very important trip for all of us. And I'm very proud of the work we did.
Yeah.
The trip and the work we did as following it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, one of my questions was going to be what you're most proud of with your work with Libby, but maybe that's it. I don't know if there's something else you want to add to that.
Well, that's a base. Yeah, that trip really was important, especially important, significant for me, and for the women, most of the 16 women. It was a very diverse group, and you'll read more about it when you read the book.
Exactly.
The people out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Tell us a little more about other work that you've done. Like maybe work that you did not with Libby or not with Will, how else were you active?
Well, of course, the Vietnam War was going on, and I was involved with Will on anti-war activities. In our community, we were integrating the schools.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was involved with the PTA in that effort.
Was that in Cleveland or was
that I was living in Berkeley, California, where I live now. Yeah, and that, the integration was a very big deal in the community at the time.
Yeah.
And a little later, I was involved doing Israel-Palestine peace work in my synagogue. And then after that with the Jewish Community Center in Berkeley. where we ran into some conflict with the Israeli consulate. That's a whole other story. And then with the Kahila Community Synagogue, which I did work with for until the 90s, actually. And now I'm very interested in Yiddish, and I'm reclaiming my Yiddish language heritage. Yeah.
Can it say something to us in Yiddish?
Ich kann reden ein bisschen, and ich sing jetzt in Yiddische Chor.
And what does that mean?
I can speak Yiddish now, and I am a part of a Yiddish folk chorus. Yeah.
It reminds me of also, I remember talking to Libby about how important singing was.
Yes.
I don't know if you sang with her, but there's a lot of mention in the book about all kinds of singing that she did.
We sang, I remember we sang in the back of the bus as we were traveling through the hills on that trip, memorable trip, on that trip through the hills of Israel, and the bus driver singing with us.
Oh, wow.
And taking his hands off the wheel at times. And it was,
that's great.
Yeah, but it was fun.
Yeah. Well, you have been a big supporter of this book from the very beginning. And you mentioned Terry Galpin-Plattner, who has also been a big supporter of the book. So I just want to call her out as well. But I'd like to hear from you. Why do you think it's important to share this story? And what do you think people will get out of reading Libby's story?
I think that it's important, especially today, because there's so many hard things happening in the world, and it's very easy to feel hopeless about it and disempowered. And her story really tells you how you can do something significant. She took initiative with a lot of hope and inspired other people to join her. I mean, she knew how to reach out and get people behind her. And I think it's an inspiring story to see that it's possible. One person can find a way to do significant things in the world that will make it better. So I think it's an important story. It also gives some history to what was going on in the peace movement at the time, which many people today aren't aware of. And I think that's very useful and important. And it's just a good story and a good read. I think you helped capture her voice in a very good way. When I was reading that in one of the earlier drafts of it.
Great.
Yeah, so I think I'm hoping a lot of people will read it. And
well, it seems like a lot of people are. A lot of people are ordering it today, so I'm really excited about that, and I'm so happy that people are going to be able to learn about some of the things that you were talking about. And that's I actually I started using an acronym to capture the key takeaways that I felt like the book brought. And I'm using the acronym PUSH, like push for peace and justice. And the P is for passion, because Libby always said, do what you're passionate about. And the U is for unity, because it's so important to, like you were talking about, bring people along, do things with other people. The S is for synthesis, the way Libby kind of blended her personal life and her activism.
Mhm.
And the H is for history, which is
Yeah.
what you were just talking about, having that historical perspective, seeing what's happened before, what can we learn from that, what can we build on. And so we'll get to read, the history that was going on in the time, Libby's history, and also, Libby was inspired by people also. So I'm excited to just share all of that with everyone. So thanks so much for joining me today and talking about your memories of Libby.
I have actually a couple things if there's time.
Absolutely, yeah. Tell us more.
Libby reminded us always what our role as US people was. And that was not to tell the people on the ground what they should do, but what we were responsible for was the US government role, which has not always, has often, most of the time, not been useful. And if we keep our, keep focused there, that's one thing. And the other is to remember that the Israelis and Palestinians are people, and this is we're talking about, when we talk about Israel Palestine and activity around it, it's their land, and we can support both peoples, and that is a really important thing to do. I happen to hear, for example, spokespeople of Standing Together, who are Israeli Palestinians and Jews, who are trying to figure out how they can live together. And I think that's the other thing I think US can do, is support any of those efforts. And there are numbers of them. Yeah. So, and I know Libby's goal was that.
Yeah.
As well.
I think so too.
Oh.
Well, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon. And thanks everyone for watching.
And thank you for your role in getting this book together, making it happen.